you, as an MP in Westminster, representing one of the poorest constituencies, not just in the UK, but in Western Europe, justify spending hundreds of billions of pounds on weapons of mass destruction that the Scottish people do not want?
There are two issues here, and can I just say to the gentleman at the back, I'm not responding to questions where people call me a traitor, so we can leave that on. I'm more than happy to deal with the issue of the UK's nuclear deterrent, and there are two parts to this. One is the question of whether as a country we want to have a nuclear deterrent. And at a time when the world is frankly more dangerous than it ever has been, now is not the time to unilaterally give up our nuclear deterrent. Now, I understand people have different opinions about this, they have strong opinions about it, and that's absolutely fine. The other part to this issue is the impact for our local economy of the base. And there are thousands of people who are employed at the base who live here in Western Bartonshire. And independence would be catastrophic for our local economy.
Right, first of all, Gemma mentions terrorism. If we are terrorist targets, it is entirely the fault of the Labour government which took us into an illegal war. Apart from that, we have no enemies. Who is our enemy? That is the fault. Westminster has been, in its 307-year history, an extremely warmongering government. Now, the one shining example where it was justified was the Second World War. Apart from that, if you look back at all the wars, they have mainly been for power, for money. Now it is maybe for oil. Westminster is a warmongering government. We wish to be a peaceful country. As far as jobs at the base are concerned, a Freedom of Information request found that there were 520 jobs which will be affected. These are the jobs which are particularly to do with nuclear. Now, I have heard some politicians not far from here bandying about figures 8,000, 11,000, 16,000. Not true. 520. The base will be retained as the headquarters of the Scottish Defence Force, not just Navy, but also Army and Air Force. There will be civil servant jobs as well. We don't want to lose jobs because they're well-paid jobs, and we are a low-paid economy. It's rubbish that they will go.
You know, there's not just money to poverty, there's poverty in terms of thinking. The poverty which says we can keep a nuclear deterrent, that monstrosity down there. See, if we were actually building chemical weapons down there, would we all still be so happy?
No.
Would we actually be screaming and shouting and demonstrating and saying, let's get rid of the chemical weapons?
Yes.
Because they create jobs? Because they create jobs? Or do we turn around and say they're equally as loathsome and we should be getting rid of them? Did we actually turn around and take a look intellectually and say, we're going to keep the slave trade because it created jobs? Morally, we abolished the slave trade even though it created jobs. That is intellectual poverty. What we need to do is rise above that, and only in an independent Scotland can we start to think, not Westminster think, but start people think, ordinary people think, common sense think. And the kind of common sense think is, the days of weapons of mass destruction as a way of employing people are finished. Yes, I do feel for the workers at Fast Lane, but there's a way to resolve that. We should be actually setting up a diversification agency, and we should be actually working with the trade union movement, working with all the political parties, working with all the businesses and saying, what is going to replace it unless have a diversification agency which guarantees those workers employment, useful, productive. And I'm not very religious, but one of the things I've always believed in, turning swords into ploughshares.
I find it immoral to simply remove them from here and stick them in the backyard of our nearest neighbour, which is England. This debate fails us all if all we debate is transferring power from one parliament and one set of politicians to another parliament and another set of politicians. And that was about the deindustrialisation, particularly of the west of Scotland. And I don't need to lecture you in Clydebank about the impact of that, about the loss of shipbuilding, the loss of singers, the loss of major industries like that. Well, also under the Scottish Government. It's one thing to blame Westminster. Let me just tell you, the Scottish Government have stripped £1 billion from poverty programmes. Some of that money was coming to Clydebank. Some of that money was coming to my constituency in Dunbar. It's now not coming anymore. That's the kind of government you have. And I've got to be honest with you, I think you're stuck between two governments with the wrong priorities, because they actually deliver anything on the ground to make things that some people say, well, it's affordable because people in Scotland die off quicker. That is a paucity of ambition that I just don't want to be associated with. I want us to be able to provide dignity and respect. I'm answering a question about pensions. I genuinely want to provide dignity and respect for people as they age, and key to that is the stability of pensions. The Scottish Government, including John Swinney, acknowledge that there's a real issue about affordability. What the First Minister has said is that we would require immigration in the range of about 1 million. He's talked about the Australian system of migration to ensure that we have enough economically active people to pay for pensions going forward. Now that's a huge number. We are a nation that's built of immigrants, so I have no problem with that. But we do need to prepare in terms of infrastructure, housing, schools, hospitals, all of that. And that gives you a kind of magnitude of the task in front of us to ensure that pensions are affordable going forward.
Creates a lot of jobs, eh?
I'm going to agree with Jackie Bailey. See if it was just a simple question. Of getting rid of one shower of charlatans at Westminster to replace them with another shower of charlatans at Holyrood, I would be voting no. But it's not about that. We are going to get rid of one shower of charlatans at Westminster, and we're going to put the chains on the second law, because we're going to give them a work description. We're going to have a written constitution which says that people are sovereign over Parliament, not Parliament. We're going to give a job description that says we have a national health service and you shall not privatise it. We're going to give a job description that says we have a welfare state and you shall not abolish it. We're going to give a job description that says weapons of mass destruction are not allowed in Scottish soil and you won't do deals with America to keep it. So we are not going to just replace one set of politicians with another. We're going to replace one set of politicians with a country where the people are sovereign.
He's talking about a whole load of issues which are political choices, and whoever you elect to whatever parliament, the parties and the politicians there will make choices. This is about whether we want to Scotland out of the UK, whether we think that different borders are the answers to our problems, whether we think that nationalism is the answer to our problems, and I simply don't think it is. And telling people that if you vote for independence you will be guaranteed all these various different policies is simply not true, because it depends what politicians you elect and what they decide to do. And the way that voters decide and tell politicians what they want is they have an election. So at every election you say, well, I like what you did, I'll vote for you again. I don't like what you did, I'm going to vote you out. Governments change. You simply cannot say we will go independent and these things will be absolute forever and ever. And the point about the EU, which was the lady's question, we are in the EU right now. We may have a referendum about leaving the EU. I'm very confident we would win that referendum to stay in, and I think that's the right thing for us. What we do know is that if Scotland becomes independent, we won't be in the EU at least for a period of time, and that there will be negotiations. So the way to stay, if being in the EU is the most important thing, you need to vote no to be in the UK.
You said that you didn't think that the pound would be in the best interest of the people of Scotland. I was just interested to know if after next week we do get a guest vote, what do you think, what currency we should use in the best interest of the people of Scotland?
I think that, and I stand by, I don't think being in a currency union with the United Kingdom is in our interest, for the reason I gave before. You know, we would be handing control to the Bank of England and effectively...
What would you use?
Treasury, okay? If you can hold on. I genuinely don't think that's in our interest when we remove representation at the same time. That's not independence. We're handing control to a foreign country over our most basic issue in the economy, which is our currency. I think if you want to be a member of the European Union, it is the case that every member that applies to join and negotiates to join has to join the euro. And I have to say, for Alex Salmond, the euro was the thing, the currency choice of the Scottish Government come independence. They changed their mind when obviously there were problems with the euro that we saw in Greece, in Portugal and in Spain, and they decided that it would be the pound. He had previously described the pound as a basket case. I think if I was left with a choice, in the scenario you outlined, and we're looking for European Union membership, then it would be the euro that I think makes the most sense for us to join.
Just one comment. East Germany never found it very difficult to join with the reunited with West Germany. They got admitted in 6 weeks.
Jackie's telling us that we wouldn't be independent if we were in a currency union because the Bank of England would be in charge. Well, are you saying, Jackie, that France and Germany are not independent countries because they are both ruled by the euro and the European Central Bank? That's nonsense. Secondly, Gemma, to pick up now your point about democracy, in the last 68 years, Scotland, unbelievably, has voted for Tories 6 years out of 68. They've got them for 38 years out of 68. If we get our own government, we will get the government that we vote for every single time, and no more Tories.
What they are telling us is that they want to cut corporation tax. So they want to cut tax for big business. Well, where are we going to find this £6 billion that we need for our public services? What they will not tell us, so they will tell big business that if you vote yes, you get a tax cut. They will not tell us what the welfare system would be. So we may all, most of us would agree that the current welfare system we think is not done fairly, but none of us know what the welfare system would be like in an independent Scotland. And for me, that is just not good enough. Why can the Yes campaign tell big businesses what their tax arrangements would be, but they can't tell people on welfare benefits what they would be getting?
People don't get it. They're not getting it. It's not about the SNP, it's not about Alex Salmond. The issue here, Gemma, when you say you consistently vote against cuts to people's benefit, see when you vote with the Tories to cap welfare spending, what happens to people's benefits when that cap and they don't get cut? And that's the biggest of all, because what they've done is cut globally and then left it to Westminster to decide who gets hit highest, hardest. Austerity. Why are we in austerity? Why are we one of the richest nations in the entire planet in austerity? Because we had Labour and we had Tory governments who went to wars, who lied to us, Blair lied to us, there's no question about that, and then took us to war, spent billions, and then we had a situation where Alistair Darling, God love his wee socks, Alistair Darling on television turns out and says, do you know, I was sitting there and I got a phone call 3 hours before the Royal Bank of Scotland collapsed and I'm the Chancellor of the Exchequer and I stepped in and rescued it with billions of pounds of your money. He was Chancellor of the Exchequer and he didn't know Royal Bank of Scotland was going to collapse in 3 hours until the chairman told him. I hardly have confidence in that. That's the kind of austerity we're having to face, but we're facing austerity because there's Darling and Brown, and the last thing we'll say about Brown is nobody's ever going to forgive him for raiding £100 billion out of the pension funds to prop up his government.